Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our 2020 Civic Leadership Conference, Imagining Tomorrow by Understanding Today. Today, our presenter is Mariella Mendoza. Mariella is a co-director and Grassroots Action and media coordinator for Uplift Climate. Mariella Mendoza is an undocumented artist, writer. They are currently the co-director of Uplift, a youth-led organization that fights for climate justice and liberation in the greater Southwest and everywhere. Mariella will present on the intersection of climate and migration justice work to foster livable future with clean air, clean water, renewable energy, regenerative food system, and liberated peoples. Please join me in welcoming Mariella Mendoza. Please, Mariella, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. This is always exciting for for us to gather and to present, and even just to acknowledge each other and to see each other across this digital container that we build here. I also want to acknowledge that today is kind of a weird day for a lot of us, right? Literally just a few hours ago, we just found out that Joe Biden is the president-elect, while simultaneously Donald Trump continues to insist that he's the president-elect. So, I guess I just want to acknowledge, first of all, that that's something that's happening in this current community, right? In our local community, as well as in our global community. And I wanted to instill in you, I guess, also a sense of urgency. In the climate justice community and the environmental community, we often talk about spreading literacy. We talk about spreading literacy about climate change, spreading literacy about the rapid ways that this world is shifting and changing. There is a saying that a comrade of mine likes to say, that is, Holocaust deniers are very similar to climate change deniers. It's easier for them to, deny to themselves fascism rather than to face it head on and to talk about the dynamics of which communities get left behind and which communities are to the front, right? And so with those words, I would like to begin my presentation now. Let me go ahead and find it. Oh. I'm not sure if I can find it. Let's see. Screen one. Is that, oh, that's not it. Let me try again. Maybe I have too many tabs open. Let's see. Oh, there it is. All right. Can everybody see the screen? Okay, great. Let me go ahead and then start my presentation, La Tierra Se Defiende, Land Defense Across Borders. Now, as it was already said, my name is Mariella Mendoza, and I am the co-director of Uplift. Uplift is, can we see beyond the gray square, or are we still seeing, can we see the presentation?
Yes, we can, but since the image, the square is on the screen, it's just causing anything behind the square to not be seen. Everything around it is fine. So just want to let you know.
That's weird. Let me try and fix that. Also, Cristobal, can I send you the presentation? Maybe you can screen share it?
I'll be more than happy to do so.
Okay, let me go ahead and do that.
Oh, thank you so very much.
Also, I apologize. My bird is chirping in the background. He's a very happy little parakeet who just loves chirping. Cristobal, remind me of your email.
I put it in the chat.
Okay, I just sent it to you. Amazing. Anyways, so as I believe your name is Dika. Is it Dika? Yeah, as Dika mentioned, I am the co-director of Uplift, which is a grassroots youth organization here in the Greater Southwest. Uplift was started around 6-7 years ago. It was a youth gathering that brought together different environmentalists here in the Four Corners in the Greater Southwest. Now, when I say environmentalist, people think like an environmentalist, right? Like that's you're a scientist or you're a white kid that wears a Patagonia jacket and is constantly hiking, right? Like that's what environmentalists are. But when I got into climate justice, what was not revealed to me definitely, but definitely taught to me is no, actually an environmentalist is you and me and everyone, right? We are all living on this planet Earth. Let me just go ahead and pull up the presentation here on my iPad too, so that way I can see what's next and where we're going. Okay, Crystal, can you go ahead and go to the next slide? So I wanted to start this presentation by acknowledging Berta Cáceres. Berta Cáceres is this woman who was an anti-capitalist Honduran mujer who taught us, at least taught me from the very beginning, they're afraid of us because we are not afraid of them, right? If you can go to the next slide. Oh, Cristobal, next slide. Berta Cáceres was also murdered by different groups in Honduras. Now, the reason why I want to start this presentation by acknowledging Berta is because we are currently going through an epidemic. There is an epidemic of land defenders being murdered on the north and south. Now, when we talk about land defense, what most people think of is, again, right, you have this picture of environmentalists. But what people forget is that the indigenous communities, for us, land defense has been a part of our fight from the very beginning, from day one, right? Next slide, please. And this one's a video, if you can go ahead and click that, Crystal. All right, so next slide. So now we're going to get into a little bit of, I'm going to share with you a little bit of my personal story here. Cristobal, if you can go to the next slide. What is land defense? So let's start with that, because I know that I just kind of jumped in here and talked to you a little bit about Berta Cáceres. But what really is land defense, right? Next slide. So if you can see right here, and this is where I'm going to start my story. So when I was just in my early 20s, so first of all, I'm an undocumented immigrant. When I was 12 years old, I was brought here to this country and separated from my mother. Now, when I was 23 years old, I got DACA, and I was able to file a bunch of paperwork and have a work authorization pass. And in that same year, my mother filed for her visa, and soon we were reunited. Now, by the time my mother had already been reunited with me, there was a new component in my life that would continue to take over my entire life, and that is land defense. So what is land defense? Well, when I was 23 and I was still trying to figure out what to do as someone who had been undocumented for, continues to be undocumented, but had just gotten stable, a couple of my activist friends asked me, hey, would you like to go on a camping trip? And I said, of course, that sounds fun. I love camping. I've never been, but that sounds fun, And they said, okay, great. Just a heads up, it's an activist camping trip. So we're actually going to a mining site. And I said, okay, yeah, that sounds, interesting, going to a mining site. And so we went, and we had to hike in to get to the mining site. And there was a scar on the earth, the size of a suburban house. And I had never seen anything like that before. And I remember being 23 years old and just thinking, who would do this? And then these activists, they started telling me, well, this is a tar sands mine. And I said, well, what's a tar sands? And they said, tar sands is when you drill into the earth and you dig up these sands that are tarry, and then you frack them, you push them with water, and you do all of this to get basically the most minimum amount of fuel through all of this maximum output. And they say that it's good for the economy because it creates jobs. And I said, well, what's the environmental, impact? And there were scientists there, because a lot of people think of land defenders as crazy environmentalists that just, were protesting all the time. No, they're scientists. And the scientists there told me, no, the impact is awful, Ella. It's actually really, really bad. And it changed my life. And so next slide, please. I joined this group of people called the Utah Tar Sands Resistance, and we started fighting this mine. And over the next 5 years, I camped, I want to say maybe about a dozen times with the Utah Tar Sands Resistance folks. Every summer, we would go back and we would run back and forth from the city. We would set up an encampment and we would fight this mine. And in 2017, I believe, the industry that was trying to build the tar sands mine, which was called U.S. Oil Sands, went bankrupt. And that was directly as a result of ongoing back-to-back direct actions over a series of 5 to 6 years. Next slide. So when I think of what is land defense, to me, what that means is it is the act to defend the sacred. It is the act to put your body on the line, to look up the legal ways, to talk to your friends that know what's up, to literally do whatever it takes to stop the project that is trying to be built onto the land. That is land defense to me. And a land defender can be someone in the scientist community, it can be a doctor, it can be a lawyer, it can be a friend, it can be people on the front lines, such as myself. The point of it is that land defense is to defend the land and to protect the sacred. Next slide. So we have a saying in the migrant community. El pueblo no se vende, se ama y se defiende. And we have a saying in the migrant land defender community. La tierra no se vende, se ama y se defiende, right? Land is not for sale. You love it and you protect it. Our hood is not for sale. You love it and you protect it. Next slide. This is a saying by the father of one of my friends, Kanahus Manuel. There is room in this land for all of us, and there must also be, after centuries of struggle, room for justice. For indigenous peoples, that is all we ask, and we will settle for nothing less. So while traveling around the country, going from land defense camp to land defense camp as a young activist, I met a lot of different people. I attended a lot of different fights. And what I found out is that the communities that are part of the land defense community are already intersectional and are already there as far as like, I didn't need to go to a camp and tell people like, hey, you know that undocumented people, it's okay for us to be here. They were already there. They already knew what was up. I have honestly never met stronger allies than indigenous people from this territory. I have never been more told that I am supposed to be here than from indigenous people who are actually here. When cussing out Trump supporters who would tell me, you need to go home, this isn't your land, indigenous people were the ones who would grab me by the hand and say, no, you're right, it's actually my land, and Ella's fine to be here, and y'all are the ones who are intruding here. If you actually read a fucking book on colonization, you would actually know what the fuck we're talking about, right? And I say that not to say like that we need to take advantage of that relationship, but that we need to honor that relationship. indigenous people have a historical relationship with the land. And so, at least in my opinion, as part of the migrant community, it is my intent to not just honor that relationship, but to fucking fight for it, you know? If people are going to be here on this land pretending that resource extraction for the benefit of industry and of capitalistic enterprises is going to be it, then I look to my comrades on the front lines and say, you know, when the enemy of life is capitalism, then we become the land defending herself, right? Next slide. Oh, next slide. This fight goes deep into the earth. The earth, again, transcends borders. Here we see the United States-Mexico border, and then down in Mastepec, the Guatemala and El Salvador, Honduras, Central American border. As I mentioned, Berta was from Honduras, and that is a huge key part and the reason why these land defense fights are happening. It is a really big part of the bureaucracy that is coming from the oil companies, the drilling companies that are trying to take advantage of the shady deals that are happening in these countries and to take advantage of people, just as the United States initial founders took advantage of indigenous people on here. It is literally the act of attacking the land of resource extraction. It is a continuing and ongoing colonization. Next slide, please. Here we have a video from actually some of the folks at the Tohono-O'odham border, which is in southern so-called Arizona. I'll go ahead and let the video play itself.
If plans for a wall do get approved, it will have to get through the Tohono O'odham Nation and their land. It's an area roughly the size of the state of Connecticut. It includes more than 60 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border. Verlin Jose is the vice chairman of the Tohono O'odham Nation.
To put a border wall here, it would be detrimental to our people. It would have a psychological effect. It would have an emotional effect. I think you would like it if I built a wall right through your home. This is our traditional homelands.
Like most Native American tribes, the Tohono O'odham are U.S. citizens with a self-governed reservation. But unlike most tribes, it has members living in both the U.S. and Mexico. According to tribal administration, roughly 32,000 live in the U.S., while 2,000 members live in Mexico.
We've never crossed the border crossed us. We see just another obstacle in our path to go visit family, to go visit friends, to go to sacred sites in Mexico. But we feel betrayed back for 160 years when this international boundary was created without any consent or in any discussion.
He's referring to the Gadsden Purchase.
Next slide, please. And so we are seeing the effects that capitalism, settler colonialism is having on these tribes and is having on our own people, that it's having on the land, from the murders of the sacred saguaro cactus on the border to the effect that it's happening on the Tohono O'odham community. Next slide, please. The good news is that, as I mentioned, there are strong alliances between indigenous folks, migrant indigenous folks such as myself, that we see, that we see people rising up, that we see people fighting back, right? One of the strongest coalitions that I have seen is the O'odham Anti-Border Collective. They're on Facebook, and they are literally doing direct actions back to back. One of my friends got arrested there just a few weeks ago. And it has been a very strong, support, because to them and to us and to myself, right, for us, this fight is intersectional. It is not about, we're fighting because, on my own end, I'm fighting because I'm undocumented and I don't want the border to be built. I'm fighting because I'm undocumented and I don't want the border to be built, but I'm also fighting because that's my sisters, that's my brothers, that's my siblings on the front lines. Because to care about the earth is to care about each other. Next slide. So with this very quick presentation, I would also like to give you, because I could talk about this nonstop. I have been a land defender for roughly around 6-7 years now. I'm 30 now. I am no longer that 23-year-old girl, jumping in front of a bulldozer, yelling, fight this, I have become instead someone kind of like, I guess, the older version of that person. So I could literally talk about this for hours and hours. I have camped in some, incredible actions. I have, like I said, stood in front of bulldozers. I've run away from police many a time. I have been almost arrested multiple times, and I have had the privilege to camp with other fellow Indigenous folks, arm in arm, and to fall asleep and to wake up with them, to fight one more day against pipelines and tar sands across this land. So for me, this is really my joy. So if you are also interested in the topics of land defense, especially from an Indigenous BIPOC, cutie BIPOC perspective, please hit me up. My organization is Uplift. The Guardian has been investigating murdered land defenders in Latin America for years. As I mentioned, there is literally an epidemic. The way I like to say it is, in the South, land defenders are being murdered by guns, but in the North, land defenders are being murdered by systematic oppression. I have a lot of friends that are gone too soon because of mental health issues in the land defender community. There's a lot of poverty as well and displacement. For further readings on autonomous land defense, I would recommend for anyone interested to look up the Zapatista uprising, the Wet'suwet'en access point in Canada, the KXL pipeline, which was a continuation of the Standing Rock Dakota access pipeline. Next slide. And then for more connections beyond land defense, I would urge you to look at the connections between the murdered land defenders and the missing murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirits and man camps, right? The connections between the murdered land defenders and the cartels, as well as the rise of fascism, border imperialism and its connections to settler colonialism and capitalism, and the need for Indigenous communities to preserve their autonomy and their sovereignty. Specifically look into Cherán, Michoacán. Cherán, Michoacán is an incredible example of some folks that decided to take the fight into their own hands and rise up. And then the last slide, almost the last slide, is just a reminder that this is specifically showing direct service, right? You're working to address the immediate needs of individuals of a community, often involving contact with the people or places being served. Land defense is a form of direct service in that way, but it's also community organizing and activism. You're organizing with your community, you're involving, you're educating, you're mobilizing, right? And this collective or individual action not only influences others or persuades others, but like I said, in the case of the local Utah tar sands mine, it ripples across the world and it changes things. I never in my life thought that I would be a part of a movement that stopped a multi-million-dollar project. Just me and a handful of raggedy queers on the front lines saying fuck no to a bulldozer. But we did it with some hard work, some hard legal battles, and ongoing actions. Next last slide. And gracias, thank you. From my own personal self. And just remember, anything is possible.
Thank you, Mariella. That was Mariella Mendoza, an activist and climate uplift. Mariella's presentation was really remarkable, and she taught us a lot of things and widened our view about Native American and what we need to do to protect the land that we live. Thank you so much, Mariella, and we will take any Q&A. If anyone has a question for Mariella, please, we are open.